Welcome to the Dr. Donna podcast, here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Innovative, evidence-based recovery that helps to identify intergenerational trauma, allowing for freedom and embracement of the healing process. Today, episode 120, As Far as You Can Go Before You Have to Come Back, Part 2, with special guest, Alle. And now your host, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee.
I'm Dr. Donna, and welcome to my podcast. I'm picking up from last time when I was talking to Alle about her book, As Far as You Can Go Before You Have to Come Back. I just love that title. Anyway, so I had asked her if she would consider and ponder what happened when she was in Japan. She talked about that. When she was in Japan and realized that, I think I need a little more than a 12-step program here. Something is really wrong. So, Alle, welcome back.
Thank you.
Did you give that question some thought time?
Quite a bit. And what I remember is standing on a platform of an outside train station and a yellow train pulling into the station and kind of slowing down, but the windows flashing by, as the train slowed down.
Mm-hmm.
And I just did not see a way that I was going to live in Tokyo, take 4 to 6 trains a day, and not throw myself in front of one of them.
Wow.
I mean, there was just this thing about a yellow train coming through, and I'm a resilient person, and I had handled, after I got into 12-step programs, just straight through OA, and then questions came up about my drinking, and questions came up about my sexual activity, and none of it threw me for a loop in that same way. And, and then I started to really go, okay, I am an incest survivor, and a friend of mine had gone to the Meadows, and I was like, well, that sounds like a really great place to go, but it cost $20,000, and that's what it cost at the time.
Yeah, everybody, that's not what it costs now.
4, right? I'll do that 4 times. But at the time, that was a ton of money, and I didn't have it. And then I was standing on that platform in Setagaya Station. That's the name of the station. And I just saw that yellow train coming in, and I saw myself stepping right in front of it. And I thought, I can't do that. And suddenly $20,000 didn't seem like so much money.
Mm-hmm.
And I called the Meadows and I arranged how I was going to pay for it. And I got on a flight and I went to Arizona.
Oh, wow. And you said initially that after you'd been there a while, somebody made a decision that they couldn't help you.
They couldn't help me is what they felt. They felt like I had something psychologically undiagnosable that they just thought was too big. That's what Pat Melody around the place said at the time. It's like, it's just too big for here. And I said, well, what should I do? And I mean, it's like, if you can't get it together at the Meadows, where am I supposed to get it together, right? They were like the place at the time for people dealing with childhood trauma, especially sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And Donna said, and Pat said, well, I have this woman who used to work here who's in Seattle, and I think you should go work with her. And so I said, okay, because now I see options, but at that point I didn't see any options. Now looking back, of course, I can say, oh, well, I could have gone back to Tokyo. But I don't know what I would have done in Tokyo. I wasn't going to be getting any better,
No.
And so I just figured Seattle sounds nice. It's not like you said, go live, in some desert, somewhere, or
you were already in the desert.
I was in the desert, but the Meadows was a nice, like in some like sandy, nothing going on but a tree,
Oh, okay.
I need a city. I'm a city person. I need to be in like a vibrant cultural center. And Seattle sort of sounded like that. And then I got here and I still hadn't thought about being a writer yet. It had never really occurred to me that I was a writer.
When did that occur to you?
Well, let's see. Actually, I take that back. Right before the spring before I left for the Meadows, someone in Tokyo needed an article on Tai Chi. They just come up in their editorial meeting. We need an article on Tai Chi. And someone said, oh, I know somebody who practices. And so she initially set up to interview me, but then she said, you can write this article. I said, ooh, that sounds fun. And then they told me they were going to pay me $300. And I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to write stuff. But what I hadn't thought about ever was writing any fiction, let alone a novel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is a novel.
The first book, as far as you can go before you have to come back, is definitely a novel.
And is it fiction?
Well, what makes a novel, yes, it's totally fiction. Let me just say that. But I have this, I think because of the personal nature of the book, people want to know, like, did you just change all the hair colors and then it's called fiction? And no, it truly is fiction. I had to learn how to write a novel. And in the first few drafts, there was probably a lot more of my story in there. But what happens is, as I got better at writing a novel, I realized all the stories I've heard, all the stories I've, had of my own experience, and all the stories I make up become kind of like this material.
Okay.
And then from that basic material, I need to cut the dress. That's the novel. You really do get this sort of basis of the world that you want to create. And then you go in there and you make it. And things have to work to make the story work, not to tell the story the way you want to tell the story. So like there are things in there that I want to have, but they don't matter because the story takes on its own reality. And you have to find that reality, not the story that you want to tell.
Okay. Well, would you like to read from your book?
To. So this part, it's called Crashing. It's the book is a mixture of full-length chapters and then things that I call flash chapters based on this thing called flash fiction, which is sort of like 500 words or less, or sometimes 250 words or less. And some of those flash chapters, I didn't know there was such a thing called flash when I first started writing. I thought you had to have long chapters. And then I just started breaking off little bitty bits. And they seemed to make sense to me as little bitty bits. And luckily, I found this thing called flash fiction because it's okay to write, is what I'm saying. If you write little bitty things, that's fine. You can write a book of little bitty things. So this takes place in about the middle of the book. And the main character is in the kitchen in her big old house in Japan making tea. Waiting in the kitchen for the water to boil, I flashed to a different time my family was at the beach. In this memory, I was 9 years old. My father was taking pictures of me, and I felt like a movie star. My cover up was Lifesaver. Let me go back there. My cover up was Lifesaver green with inch-wide shoulder straps that I loved the color of, crisp white. I played catch with my little brother and sister, but for once, I was the movie star. My straps slid pleasantly back and forth as I dove for the ball. We bought it at the drugstore, the ball, along with my father's film and the juicy fruit gum that would fall out of the purse. And the juicy fruit gum that would fall out of the pack into the bottom of my mother's purse. I was sure that Mom knew when I snuck those flat, foil-wrapped sticks from between the pennies and the loose cigarettes. The gum never tasted only sweet. It always had tobacco flakes in it. The kettle began to tremble. I remembered the sand between my toes felt scratchy, a grown-up feeling, almost painful, but even that rough sense pushed me towards beauty. The air smelled exactly the way beach air should smell, like waves crashing. The wind held just a touch of sunscreen. My father's fancy camera focused on me for once. I loved the attention. I was beautiful, a movie star. I was green. I was mirth. I was everything they wanted me to be. My shoulder straps had a round white button on each, a big, round white button. A button. In the kitchen, the kettle shrieked as loudly as my other mother ever had. And in that one moment, I let it in. What my father would do with the pictures once he developed them, due to his body, while he watched mine. And my hand reaching for the kettle shook because I'd brought back the button and the ocean and the waves. The waves crashing.
Wow.
That's that part.
That kind of leaves things open for the imagination.
I hope so.
Well, that was very moving. I mean, I saw it in my mind.
Good.
I could see it in my mind what you were talking about, with the the green cover and pictures, and you can almost feel it being there.
Good.
Yeah. So did those things happen to you?
Let me think. Did that happen? Sometimes, when I look back at what I've created, I'd have to pull it out thread by thread and go, did that happen? I think what I do know is that the emotional awarenesses are all true. Whether the exact detail attached to that awareness happened in my life or happened in somebody else's life and they told me about it, all that part is plot, right?
Mm-hmm.
The emotional awareness of understanding that the way my father was looking at me, a child, was sexual, was definitely my truth.
Okay. So that was happening to you at the time.
That definitely happened, yes. How it expressed itself in my life versus how it shows up in this book, to me, that's not as important as the idea that the emotional awareness is out there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little hesitant to talk about what happened to me versus, I think because I also write nonfiction, I have this little stubborn feeling of like, well, if I wanted to write nonfiction about my whole life and childhood, I would have done that. And I didn't.
Okay.
For some reason, this part comes out as fiction. And I've written about my childhood in nonfiction in essays and things like that. But I want this story, the story of Carly who goes overseas and finds herself through doing Tai Chi, to exist in the mind of the reader as Carly's story.
Not you.
Not me.
Okay. But you're talking about, in the book, you said this book is about as far as you can go before you have to come back. And you said that you experienced that.
Yes, I really did. I really felt like death was imminent. That like actual death, not just like, oh, I was going to live for a long time and have a living death. I felt like I was not going to make it. And that's when I went and started to understand the real, what existed below the addictions, as in terms of the trauma and the codependency that results from trauma, and how that really is going to lead you to death if you don't do something about it. And I had to do something about it.
And so that moment at the train station with the yellow train.
Yes.
That was the moment that you realized there's something bigger going on here that makes me want to step in front of that train, and I know I will if I don't get the help I need.
Exactly. And it was more than that. There was a sad feeling of, I don't want to step in front of a train. I was clearly carrying somebody else's need for me to be dead, if that made sense. Sure. The whole "we'll kill you if you don't tell," which I definitely heard. I know a lot of survivors hear that. If you tell, we'll kill you. Or we'll kill someone in your family. Oh, really? Well, I've heard a lot of people in meetings say that. I mean, I think perpetrators say that to little kids because kids believe it.
They do. I know they do. Say that they will kill you. Sometimes they say they'll kill your parents or
your dog
siblings
or
something like that. But they, it's like they also say things like, "This is our special secret," and this is what makes this relationship, or you're more special than everybody else. And,
I heard that one.
Yeah, because children want to feel special, for crying out loud.
Yeah, of course. I mean, adults want to feel special.
True. Sometimes you do.
For children, I mean, now that I see at being a mom, I see how unknowing a child is. They come into the world knowing not even how to eat. You know, they know how to breathe in, and it is really the parents' job to keep them alive. And every day they learn a little something more. So from a survival perspective, knowing you are special enough to be kept alive is everything. You know, so that I think in countries and cities where we don't, you know, worry about where our next meal is coming from, and we don't worry about a rocket coming in and blowing up, you know, our house or something like that. The next level is that emotional survival. I need someone to love me that much to keep this going. Right.
And so you heard that, but you also heard "we'll kill you."
Yes.
And was that from your father?
Well, you know, my mother also was abusive. My mother had multiple personality disorder. So there were parts of her, sometimes whoever was there was extremely abusive. And sometimes whoever was there kept me alive. I have no doubt that what they call the host, the primary character, my mother loved me deeply and kept me alive. But she wasn't always present.
And you said that also. So are your parents still living? Do you know?
I do not know that.
Either parent? You don't know?
My mother died a long time ago.
Okay.
And I am pretty sure my dad is still alive. He just seems like he's too mean to die. I just think he's just going to stay alive for as long as he can. Because whatever comes next for him is not going to be nice, I believe.
So when you say that, it sounds like you haven't had relationship with your father for a long time.
I have not. That's the other thing that I came to understand in the Meadows was like, why would I want to be in this family with this crazy person? He is not. And I didn't, you know, invite him to my wedding or anything. And my mother-in-law was shocked. She knew my family's story. I had told her, you know, I told my husband's family about my situation. And she was like, but they're not coming to the wedding. There's this weird, like, turn of the corner of like, okay, I'm so very sorry all that happened to you. And you're very strong. And we're so glad you survived. But not at the wedding. It's going to look funny. And I was like,
wow,
it's pretty funny if he's there. I'll tell you that, because I'll be looking at all the little kids, and that's all I'll be able to think about. So it's just, you know, I don't see the point in maintaining relationships with people who are. That seems like a basic good thing in life, and unless you have to work with these people, literally, unless these people are in your life because your job involves dealing with them, don't deal with them. Just don't. I see in my survivor group so many people who try to like, I have to make it better. I have to make it better. I have to make it better. And the freedom I felt when I was like, well, they can make it better. If he wants a relationship with me, I'm not hard to find. Like, I'm your kid. Find me. You know what I mean? Like, there will be ways if you want a relationship with me. It's not my problem anymore to try to figure out how to have a relationship with you.
No, very good.
Yeah.
You know, because if you're over there saying, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? You're about 5.
Yes,
like a 5-year-old grown-up body.
Well,
you know?
This was another real revelation. Someone in program said to me, this was in Tokyo, said, you sound like you need a relationship with your father. And I was like, well, yeah. And she said, but adult children don't need relationships with their parents. Adult children want relationships with their parents. And it had never occurred to me to be in any sort of relationship where you didn't need the person. That seemed to me the basis of love. And I think when I got that in my head around not needing people, but wanting people, that was it was one of those things that gets layered down like layers of paint or layers of like acrylic when you're making like some sort of beautiful piece of art out of acrylic. You have to layer it down and let it dry, layer it down, let it dry. And there were a bunch of those leading up to the realization of, I better get the help I need.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever I have to do money-wise, whatever I have to do relationship with my family-wise, I'm going to get the help I need. And they'll take care of themselves. And that was one of those layers was adults don't need relationships with other people. Adults have relationships with other people. They want relationships with other people. And sometimes they don't want relationships with those people, which is a good thing to understand the differences between.
And the differences between needing, adults needing a relationship with their parents and adults wanting a relationship with their parents would be when you're a child, you absolutely need them to help you survive. Right?
Or you'll die. You'll
are,
starve. You won't have clothing.
Yeah, you're completely dependent on them. And like you said, when you're born, you have no idea. I mean, you don't even know you don't have an idea. You don't even know how to, you've known how to breathe for a few minutes and that'd be about it. But when you become an adult, it's like your need list should go way small. Your want list might go way up, right? And part of that
hopefully, because we want people full of, aspiration and goals and heading for a vibrant life that, is satisfying to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, going back to, where I left off was, it's like when you have emotional immaturity, that means that you're an adult, right? It's like you are an adult and you haven't recognized the fact that you're an adult. You're actually grown up now. You can get your own food. You can get your own clothing. You can get, you don't have anybody in the world that you quote unquote need in order to survive.
Right.
But when you're an adult and you feel like you absolutely need to have these relationships with your family, your parents, your even your siblings. It's like, if I need that, then you're not in your adult reality. If you want that, you are in your adult reality. You say, well, I'd really like to have a relationship with my father. And then you say, well, maybe not. Because,
maybe not.
Because
and some people come to the conclusion that, maybe their mom was an asshole, but you know what? That's their mom and they're just going to love her for who she is and have that relationship. I didn't make that choice, but there are people who do. And I think there are people, referencing mother-in-law for a long time. I made that choice. Like, she is a difficult person, but you know what? That's my kid's grandma. And so for now, we're going to have this relationship, and you can make those decisions as an adult when you don't need to have that relationship. Right. If I felt like in order to keep my marriage, I needed to be in a relationship with my mother-in-law and it needed to be good and we needed to be friends, I'd be up the proverbial river without a paddle, right? Because then all anyone had to do to make me miserable was to just do nothing. All she had to do was not participate in my happiness and I would be miserable, right? But in saying, you know what? I'm going to just have this relationship and I'm going to have it pretty much on her terms as long as it doesn't cross into abuse. I was okay with it.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of what I call, and you probably call it, boundaries. I mean, you got to have pretty good boundaries to let somebody who's kind of nasty be in your life because they're not being abusive to your children and it's their grandma, right? It's like, but if she's not nice to you, but she's nice to your kids and you make a decision, but you have a boundary, and that boundary isn't about, this is what you can and cannot do. It's like, it's a thing that you do for yourself. It's like, okay, we're entering the world of this person, and now I just need to know that everything she says and does is more about her than it is about me. So I can just look at her like she's on TV, turn the volume down. If I'm tired of listening to, leave the room if I don't want to be.
I left the room several times.
Right. So congratulations. I mean, I think that all by itself is such a testament to your recovery, because that, she's in your life a long time.
Yes, she was. She was in our life a good long time. And, what's important is that my kids had a grandma.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I just made that decision together. Was like, that is what is important. And when that stops being what's critical, then we reevaluate,
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes life takes care of things that you don't take care of.
When you're not trying to be in control of everything, you mean that things happen
just
anyway?
work out, and I can have peace around them,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't all up in it trying to make it work my way.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you turn it over, and then you do your best on this like human level to try to make things work out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we've come to a place where we need to end it. I'd really like to pick back up with you, Alle.
I love that.
We've talked about the abuse and all that that entails for you. Of course, your book. What I'd like to do when we come back is I'd like you to talk more about how that recovery, how it progressed to the place, your own, right? I mean, you don't have to go into detail, but your own recovery and Carly's recovery got to the place where you could actually write a book about it.
Okay, I would love to talk about that.
Okay.
I will put on my thinking cap.
Okay, good. You just keep that thinking cap on until we meet again.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Donna podcast here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Dr. Donna podcast is copyright 2023 Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.